Good evening and welcome to African Voices platform. My name is Chiwe Chihana, and today our show is dedicated to voter registration in Zambia. So voters in Zambia have raised concerns at the move by the Electoral Commission to abandon the existing voters register and to instead introduce electronic voting for a very short period of time. Tonight's guests are actually from Zambia, and we've got Tinashe Mazala, who is the board chairperson for the Center for Young Leaders in Africa. Good evening, Tinashe.
Good evening, Chiwe, and thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining me. And I've also got Mulunga Shimbela, who is a sitting opposition councillor in Zambia and also executive director of the Center for Young Leaders in Africa. Good evening, Johns, and welcome to African Voices platform.
Good evening, and thank you for having me.
So thanks a lot to both of you for joining me today. I would like to get some clarity on what exactly is going on. We've known of opposition members and various factions in Zambia who have accused the government of instructing the commission to re-register people to disadvantage the opposition parties in the upcoming elections in Zambia in 2021. The president has obviously come out strongly against this, and he's saying the Electoral Commission of Zambia is an autonomous organization. They make the decisions. What is happening, Johns?
Thank you, Chiwa. Thank you very much again for having me here. So, like you have rightly put it, yes, the country is going to be undergoing conducting a general election next year. And prior to that, it's only natural that you update your voters register, you incorporate young people that have become of age, you change details of people that have relocated and moved. And this is a routine thing that should be happening every time when you're having an election. Now, the 2016 Electoral Act that the Electoral Commission is operating under basically mandates the Electoral Commission to be able to continue to register voters continuously. But I think being a third world country and the financial predicament and the economic malice that our country finds itself in, the ECZ is unable to fulfill that mandate of continuously registering people that are reaching the age of maturity of getting the voters card. Now, to that effect, the government is supposed to hold what is called a mobile NRS registration process to be able to give national registration cards to citizens that are eligible to get those cards, and then ultimately those citizens can access the voters' cards. But then this hasn't really gone as expected, and it's from this unsmoothness that is causing the other people in the country to accuse then the government, to say, look, there's a deliberate policy or there's a deliberate program to defranchise the people that are in the opposition stronghold. So basically that is arising on the fact that the mobile registration of NRC is on the other part of the country, which is supposed to be phase 2 of the national registration card, hasn't really gone smoothly. Some places, as we are talking right now, they have not even started. And yet, less than 30 days from now, the ECZ is supposed to move in and start registering people. So from this, you can see the apprehension and why I think other stakeholders, the opposition political parties, feel that the government is taking a systematic way of defranchising people.
Thanks a lot, Johns. Tinashe, do you have a take on this? Do you equally feel, as a representative, I suppose, of the Center for Young Leaders in Africa, do you feel that this is a disadvantage to the registration process to democracy and the upcoming elections?
It definitely is, because like John says, according to our legislation, this process should be ongoing, but then they leave it to they choose to limit it to like a 2 to 3 month period. And look at how big Zambia is. And already when you speak to people on the ground and when you listen to some of the complaints people are having, they decided to do it in segments. So they're doing it according to regions. And some of the complaints, we're not sure whether it's propaganda or not, or it's factual. There are certain regions where people have complained about the people that are in charge of the pre-registration of and national registration cards, which is our what we call the NRC. They're saying in certain regions it's harder for you to get registered for your NRC, and this, if you're not able to have your national registration card before this process, it means that you automatically be barred from registering in the election. So I think that's one of the major factors that has also come up during this process. So they say that they started in certain regions, and there the registration seemed to go on well, and then when they went to a different region, there were complaints of them running out of materials, them not being on site like they were supposed to be. And the thing is, we also don't know what is true and what isn't, because it seems like we're not getting enough information. And then in addition to that, this process is also being heavily politicized. So you're not sure what's propaganda, what's factual. I think 2 weeks ago, I saw a picture on Twitter with these minors holding national registration cards. And it's alleged that they have some sort of disorder that prevents them from growing or something like that. But then on the other hand, people were also saying these are children. But then if you really
I'll just come in there. I actually did see those images as well, and children seemed to be from these young looking people with the national registration cards seemed to have been from one particular area. So what's the insinuation here? Is the insinuation then on your end that this was a move by the opposition or the party in government? Who was responsible for that, if at all you are right on your allegations?
Again, my point is that there's so much ambiguity, and we have more questions than we have answers. Because I was going to say before you came in, even when you look at, like, when I saw that particular image, I was not able to see whether those national registration cards belong to those children or they were just holding it. So you're not sure what to deduce from these pictures. We don't know whether it's the opposition just, you know, politicizing this process, or it's true. Like many people are alleging, the way that this voter registration period has been designed it's been designed to rig the elections or to steer the elections in the favor of the government. So I really cannot say they're rigging the election or the opposition is pushing propaganda, because we do not know what the facts are. Like I said, I think there's a lot of misinformation, and there's not enough information coming out from the right channels. They're not answering the questions that the citizens have.
Okay, thanks a lot, Tinashe. That's quite informative, and I would be on board with you in saying I think it would be very confusing for anybody if there's no reliable source of information. But then in our presence, we've actually got a sitting councillor. So Jones as well doubles up as a sitting councillor in Zambian politics. Now, Jones, I am confused. So I'm wondering about you as an elected representative, which is quite key. So you would be the person passing on information to the people in your ward. I am confused about this statement on the Electoral Commission of Zambia's website. So this was issued on the 18th of September, and I'll just read an excerpt from it. It says, the Electoral Commission of Zambia wishes to inform all stakeholders and members of the public that the online voter pre-registration will be launched on Monday, 21st September. The exercise will end on 6th November. Then it goes on to say the online voter pre-registration is not a final registration. All those who will pre-register online will be required to visit a physical registration center to submit their biometrics. And registration centers will be open during the period 28th October to 30th November. What on earth is that?
Please don't be confused. So I'll try by all means to unconfuse you. So what it is what is happening, like I did allude to earlier, the ECZ, you know, they try to track the national census. So implying that every 10 years, they are able to update their voters register. Now, that essentially makes perfect sense, because really 10 years is a very long time. So you want to update the register, remove people that maybe have passed on, and then clean up the register, come up with a new one. Now, in the quest to do that, like I said, the ECZ is continuously supposed to be updating their register. If somebody, a relative passes on, you can get their credentials, go to ECZ, tell them like, okay, look, this person has passed, then they page them out. But then this does not happen. And the reason they give is that there's no enough financial resources to continuously update the register. So this year, their target is to have 9 million voters. Now, currently, our voters roll that is in existence has got about 6.897 million voters. Okay, meaning they have to capture about 2.5 million or 2.1 million, somewhere there, new voters. But then they have now decided to say, okay, you know what? Everybody else who has a voters register is not, that voters register is not to be valid. So you have to go and get a fresh one. So I think in their quest to be able to reach that target of 9 million voters, they have decided to come up with an innovative method of registering the would-be voters via online. So this is not perfectly to say it is now final registration. So it is just a pre-registration process, you know, and then such that when you pre-register, when you go to the booth on that particular day when they open, which is the 28th you mentioned, you can go to a booth which says all those that have been pre-registered, just come here, present your ID, then they'll shorten the process of you being in the queue to get your voters register. So basically that is what is happening. So it's just a pre-registration process, but you're still required to physically visit a registration center for you to go and obtain your, to get your biometrics, the 10 fingerprints, and then you get your voter's card.
Thank you so much, John. So is it correct to say then that there's been misinformation about people who are already on the voters register having to re-register themselves then? Is that what you're saying? Or are they doing that? And is that why citizens are starting to sue?
Yeah, I think people, the citizens are suing from a perspective of, you see, I have a voters register as a sitting councillor, and I have a voting place. So now you have to force me to go and discard my old voters card, obtain a new one for me to be able to vote. Now, in cost accounting, that's a duplication of a process. Therefore, it will cost me and them more money than if they just said, okay, just come and verify your voters' details, because I already have a voters register. And then they haven't sort of qualified why I need a new voters register. Is it going to have new features that this particular voters register that I have now doesn't have? If that be the case, then they should have come out in the open, for example, as a councillor myself. I challenged them at some point to say, look, the voters register, the voters card that I have now has got no identification number which is matching to my national registration number. And I tell them, my NRC number should be the key identifier that identifies me as John. So you have a voters card that has got no special unique identification number other than the barcode that they give me themselves. So they have not explained to the citizens to say, this is the rationale why we want you to go and get a new voters card, other than saying we are overhauling the entire voters register. And then they don't provide the basis for overhauling. The only reason they've given is that we have to update the register and then page out people that have passed away. But you see, that particular reason does not hold a lot of water, considering that the Electoral Commission lacks credibility already in the country. So everybody else who is not maybe in the ruling party is very skeptical.
Could you clarify that? I would really like to hold you on that one. The Electoral Commission of Zambia lacks credibility in the country. So you're speaking from a perspective of an opposition member. Could you clarify what you mean by that?
I'm sure you're an ardent follower of the elections in Zambia and the aftermath of
No,
the
I am not. I would really love to be taught.
Okay.
For the benefit of our viewers anyway, yeah.
Indeed. So, like we had the 2016 general elections that were won by 1%. The margin was only 1%. But then we have scenarios where the chairperson of the Electoral Commission of Zambia was announcing wrong results. I can share you the videos of those where he's announcing wrong results, such that when you tally them, they won't add up to 5. They will probably be adding up to 8. But he's saying, 2 + 3 = 5, and then he announced that 2 + 3
and this is this is in comparison to what the parallel voting system showed, or where you're getting the opposing information from?
No, that's just information that is that is out there that everybody else can pick.
Official platforms, or just?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, you can check, like maybe ZNBC, they would record him announcing the results for Lundazi, for example. They don't add up. And then added to that, we just had the recent by-elections, and we've had these things that accumulate. So the ECZ is unable to enforce the code of conduct. We've had the elections in Lusaka, for example, where ruling party and opposition are campaigning, and they literally kill each other. People are gunned down, and they can't enforce that particular code. They can't suspend elections in such kind of an election. So we had the Sesheke by-election, for example, if you see, where opposition leaders were running like rebels in the bush, literally running away from the police instead of the police protecting them. You have cadres that are trying to overrun a police station, and then when the police station apply force to try to quell the situation, those policemen are fired in national interest. We've had an election in Kaoma where an opposition leader supporter shoots, the ruling party supporter shoots an opposition, and the Minister of Health is even the one who's attending to that person who has been shot, and then the ECZ fails. So the code of conduct by the Electoral Commission of Zambia really leaves much to be desired. If you look at the report that was produced by the United Nations system in Zambia, called the Vulnerability Assessment Report, as an outcome of the 2016 election, it will point to you. The government itself, the president set up a commission of inquiry to look into the electoral violence and the voting pattern. That report is public. You can go on the internet and find it. If you look at the European Union report, where they even put up 30 recommendations, to say the national broadcaster gives the entire opposition combined 3% airtime to be able to campaign their message to the rest of the country. And then they give the ruling party 97%. These are facts that are coming from international reports that are prepared by the European Union, the United Nations. So as a consequence of that, the people don't have this confidence, and then they are now having to litigate, for example, to say, why do you want to defranchise people? Is it possible really for you to re-register 9 million people in 30 days? Unless if you are an economist, where you operate on the ceteris paribus principles, where if you have to model something, you hold everything else constant, and then you are able to model, then it gives you the results that you want. But in 30 days, Tandiwe, even you, we are not going to hold everybody to be on the queue for 30 days to say, I just want to register. I'm not eating, I'm not sleeping, I'm not going for work. This is 9 million people we're talking about. You cannot do it in 30 days because there's logistics of moving from one place to the other center. You spend half a day. By the time you reach on the other center, it is 6 hours later. You find 5,000 people have queued up. You can only wake up to 18 hours because you're in a rural setup. There's no power, there's no electricity, there's no nothing. So how possible is it that the ECZ can register 9 million people? And this is the question that the people are saying, no. I think you are trying to create mayhem so that people cannot even register to vote and all those things. And we are trying, by all means, I think, to help them as well, disseminate this information to the people, tell the people to pre-register probably. Maybe that can increase the number of people that register.
Right. Okay. Thanks so much for clarifying on that one. Tinashe, at the Center for Young Leaders in Africa, Zambia, one of the, your vision is actually to, part of it anyways, to the consolidation of multi-party democracy. And it sounds to me like there's concern, especially around this particular format of re-registering voters, that could limit participation, democratic participation across the spectrum. What does an organization like yours do in this particular case where, as Jones has just explained, the limitations as to how far you can engage with people? It's a very short period. What's your role in Zambian politics?
Okay, so as the Center for Young Leaders in Africa, first of all, we are comprised of the 8 main political parties in Zambia. So we have the UPND, we have the PF, we have NAREP, we have Green Party, we have UNIP, FDD, ADD. And so we're unique, first of all, by our composition makes us unique because we have the main parties, first of all, collaborating towards working towards issues that pertain to the youth. And when you look at the group that may be disadvantaged the most by this particular way of registering, it's the young people. Because initially, before this voter registration period, Jones and I had actually began talks with the ECZ because we had wanted to do a first-time voter registration campaign. Now, within this period of 30 days and taking into account the COVID-19 crisis, which slowed down everything, it makes things more complicated. So one of the things that we've been doing is just trying to get young people to be more aware of the situation that is going on, to like create awareness, to have as many young people pre-register, because they say the pre-registration process is going to make things easier. We're getting more young people to pre-register to vote and just to begin conversations around this. Jones, I don't know if you wanted to come in before.
Thank you, Tinashe, and thank you for that question. Indeed. So I think all of us, we are cognizant of the fact that we have a time constraint, and that's not the only constraint that we have. We have like financial constraints for us to be able to do the campaigns. Like Tinashe has said, the majority of the population in this country are young people themselves, 38%, between 15 and 38. And this is where you find the majority of the people that are supposed to register. I think between 2015 and 2020, there's a lot of people that have turned 18 that need to get their NRCs and then indeed register. But then these are again the same young people that are faced with economic situations where they don't have jobs. Therefore, their concentration to an activity like this one that really doesn't give them anything at the end of the day for them to feed their families. The attitude towards this really is neither here nor there, because they have to fulfill their basic needs of, first of all, having to get something to eat and feed themselves or get a job. So we are actually trying to set up a hotline and then open up our offices, like Tinashe has said, to encourage young people to come to the center. If they don't have smartphones or they don't know how to go about it, they're having challenges, they can call us, and then we guide them to see how they can register. And also bearing in mind that this is a specific kind of intervention, because internet penetration in Zambia is only 28%. And then that 28%, really 67% of it is in Lusaka and the Copper Belt. So the rest of the country, the young people, you know, the
so
kind of
for
friends
international viewers, just to clarify there, you've got, is it 10 provinces now in Zambia now, is it?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So we're talking about 10 provinces, and internet access is primarily in the 2 main sort of urbanized provinces.
Exactly, in Lusaka and the Copper Belt and a bit of southern province, where on the line of rail. So you understand that then to probably, if the ECZ, for example, had responded favorably to our desire to help them, and then they see us as collaborating partners, then we could have run a proper campaign on the line of rail so that we can aid as many young people, because we are a youth organization, we do youth interventions, we do debates with young people and things like that. Then the pressure on the ECZ, for example, would have reduced in these areas where there's high internet penetration. Then they can focus in urban and rural areas to be able to reach out to the rest of those young people. So the only thing that we can do for now is to pick the information as it is coming out of the ECZ, and then be able to reach out to the young people using our platforms, our various forums, and also our network around the country in the political parties.
Okay, thank you very much. Tinashe, did you want to come in there?
Yes, I just really wanted to allude to your earlier point about confusion. I think with many of us citizens, there's a lot of confusion because I think we have a lot more questions than answers. So we spoke about, like John spoke about, we have a very limited period of time, and they said one of the reasons why they're limiting this period is financial constraints. So you say that you have financial constraints, and then you decide to re-register 9 million people when you could have concentrated those limited resources to registering, like John said, an additional 2.5 or 3 million people and verifying the existing register. And because we had done like a big calculation. So if we're trying to register 9 million people within 30 days, that's 300,000 people per day. And it's not like this is a 24-hour process. Where if we just said they're working roughly for 10 hours a day, because then we have issues to do with internet connectivity, we have issues to do with our electricity provision, we have load shedding sometimes for 12 hours a day. So if we say on average they're working 10 hours a day, that means they're going to have to register a minimum of 30,000 people per hour. Do we really have the resources? And I just really wanted to bring out these numbers because then it paints a picture of what we are up against. And this is why we have certain citizens pushing an agenda of the court case, because it's like when you really look at what we're up against, is this really going to favor us pushing democracy if we only, like, we have limited resources and this is what happens? So I think I just wanted to paint that picture to just get people to become aware of what we're really up against.
And absolutely critical that you did that. Thank you very much. I think that puts it into even more nuanced perspective for somebody who's listening in from the outside. But clearly that's critical to what's going to be happening. Am I right to think that after any young people who qualify after the closing date of this current round of voter registration, who qualify to register as voters, will still not be able to, despite the election being, is it in November? When is it again?
It's, let me just clarify the date, but I think it's it's supposed to be the 12th of August, 2021.
So people.
Sorry,
go ahead.
Please
go ahead. All right. So once this voter exercise ends in November, you're telling me that people who qualify to register before the 21st of August, or at least even a month prior, will not be able to register anymore. Is that what you're saying, until the election afterwards?
Yes, because once this voter registration period comes to an end, if you have not registered, you cannot vote come 12th of August 2021. And that's why even in the beginning, I highlighted the issues with the NRC registration, the National Registration Card registration, because that's also a barrier to people's participation in the election. So if you do not have your NRC, you cannot register to vote. If you do not have your voter's card, you cannot register to vote.
Okay, so this is really to both of you. You've set the scene, you've given me the background and the fears, especially in the context of why citizens are suing, and also in the main interest of the opposition. I think it's a case of we won't be able to get enough people to vote for us. But is there reason to assume that the people who manage to register to vote at this point will be people who will be voting for the party in government?
That's a very biased question.
No, it's a curious one.
You see, like I'm wearing two hats here. So
I'll take both of them. So I introduced you as being a sitting councillor from the opposition. So go ahead.
Yeah, I think from the perspective of the Center for Young Leaders in Africa, we believe that every young person who's going to register to vote will be able to vote for the kind of leader that they want. And the kind of leaders that resonate with their visions and their aspirations, the ones that show them exactly what their tomorrow that they're aspiring for is going to look like and all those things. If I wear my hat as a sitting councillor who's coming from the opposition, I'll tell you that I think young people, forgive me for using this term, they're disgruntled with the current regime. You know, this country is really going through the worst economic conditions I think that we've ever been through. You know, we've got a recession right now that's going on, and then we have the highest debt that we've ever had, all accumulated in a space period of 7 to 8 years. You know, we are rated junk now. And in our budget that came out last week, the minister is just literally sending letters to Eurobond holders that lend us money to ask them to say, look, we can't pay in October, which is the day after tomorrow. We can't pay the day after tomorrow. And we're asking for those lenders to give us 6 months. But then he is not giving us that assurance, the direction, the hope that we require. So I think young people are going to reflect on these things. The 50,000 teachers, for example, that have been graduating from 2012 up to today, they can't get a job. Okay, how many of those people are discouraged to a point whereby they've gone into the villages now to just go and become farmers because they are a chemical engineer and they can't find an opportunity to practice that engineering that they need. So yes, I think the young people will vote. They'll be voting for their leaders, and the ruling party, of course, for them to be able to win the hearts of the young people, particularly, you know, who are demonstrating in the bush, because the government is spending 5 billion kwacha on public order, buying, you know, machine guns mounted on tankers, just to provide public order when there is no war in Zambia. There's never been war. Why can't we spend that money? In June 22nd, we had young people, very peaceful young people that just wanted to demonstrate against what they felt was economic hardships and things like that. Instead of the police actually creating a cordon and helping these young people demonstrate, display their placards, after 1 hour, the whole thing is done. They go back to their hungry homes. But the police literally produced a battalion of soldiers and policemen in the street, like you're in Yemen or Baghdad or something like that. So I think those are things that young people are going to be reflecting on. So look, this is a country that we need.
I'm going to ask you a follow-up question before I go to Tinashe, because I think it's important to recognize the strength, I think, in the youth vote, especially when you look at the numbers of young people and the growing generation. And I think Tinashe provided the statistics which have eluded me now. So that's quite an influential group that you have there that you could actually influence as young people, be whichever way you want to go politically, whether on the left or the right or the center of the politics. But we have an observation. We've made an observation. I think people who are in governance, that Zambian opposition politics are primarily run on social media, and they don't actually get to have an impact on the young people. So when you're talking about young people in the most rural areas of Zambia, the effects, I suppose, of this current debt. I mean, we being the first country to even ask for this debt extension, of course, it's a shame. We shouldn't have been here. We're the second largest exporter of copper. But do the young people in those far off areas understand this? How are you reaching the young people that are far from the line of rail?
Wow. I think that's really a good call to the opposition political parties. You know, it is important that the opposition political parties are able to galvanize themselves in a decent and well orchestrated manner. And they are very clear about the messaging that is going out to the different sectors of people in society. And if we talk about young people, you know, there are those young people that are in the villages. They don't have access to a lot of internet. So I think really the core is on the opposition political parties to look, how do they package themselves? Of course, the environment itself relatively, it's a bit autocratic because you have ministers from the ruling party that are able to hold youth rallies, bringing 10,000 people to come and listen. And if you are an opposition leader, you want to go in the rural setup to just bring those 1,000 people, they will slap you with a treason case, and then you'll never ever see the light of day for the next 1,000 days or so.
So that's a treason case if you do it without permission from the police, is that right?
They'll arrest you. They will literally arrest you. You know, you go
with or without a permit.
Yes, and you know, even when they've given you a permit, some minister will just wake up at midnight and say, no, I've changed my mind. Can you cancel that permit? And then if you try to say, no, but you gave me the permit, what? They'll bring the battalion of police, and you know, they've bought a lot of guns. I don't know, I can tell you with the pictures. This is not a good picture to paint, really, but you see, us as young people who, as a center who deal with young people, you know, we're in the business of creating capacity for young people to be able to participate in governance. And the dispensation that we've selected for ourselves as a country is multi-party democracy. That's why in our vision, we talk about the consolidation of multi-party through dialogue. Now, how are you going to network and dialogue if the Public Order Act that the British used in 1953 to stop the black man from going to the market is the same law that is being applied today? Because I'm at an advantage with such kind of law. It's detrimental, and we see it in the anguish of the young people. You are giving these mentorship programs, you are giving people leadership theories and philosophies. You know, you see them, they start to open up and ask you questions, but like, these are obvious things. Why are these things not happening? So really, you know, these challenges are not insurmountable. I think the opposition have to press 5 times harder than what they are doing now. It's good, yes, to be on Facebook, in Lusaka, on the Copper Belt and all those things. But then the rest of the young people in the countryside, they remain delusional. You know, when they see a chopper for the president, to them, that's a lifeline experience. They've never seen a president come out of a chopper. And they'll tell them, like, look, you see this chopper, it has a camera, it has picked all of you who came to this rally. If the president here is going to get 0, we'll come and round you up. And, you know, our colleagues are a little bit ignorant, and they're going to line up, and you find the ruling party continues to rule. So the opposition parties, I think, have got a very big task ahead of them. They really have to stand up to be arrested, like the Nelson Mandelas, like what the Kaundas went through, so that they can liberate the rest of the people. What is happening in Zambia currently is not good.
Thanks, Johnson. I mean, it's a shame that we'd have to want to, in a country that has attained independence for so long, it's a shame that we are now talking about fighting for freedom in the same way that the Mandelas were fighting for freedom. We should really be fighting for democracy and probably space for the youth advancement. But before, Tinashe, I would like to get back to you. I think you looked like you wanted to comment on this, but as you're commenting on this, could you also talk to me about the institutions? Does it mean that we do not have institutions that are reliable for all these atrocities to be going on, as you both allege?
Okay, so I think I've got a very similar view to Jones when it comes to the outcome of the election. Does it look like it's in favor of the ruling party? I think all I can give right now is my analysis. There's this saying that says, politics has no logical conclusion. So it could swing in the favor of the opposition because, like Joan said, the economic situation is bad and it's bound to get worse if there are no serious interventions that happen because of the vast amount of debt that we are in. Because there's certain debts that we're not even aware of as citizens because we don't know everything that the government is doing. And we're hearing so many rumors of them having defaulted on debts and, you know, certain entities, parastatals being taken over by certain people because our government defaulted on debt. We have no way of verifying that because we do not have access to information. But yeah, and then also when I do a critical analysis of the urban youth, for example, you gave the example of opposition parties being strong on the internet. And when I do an analysis of the urban youth, they're highly distracted on the internet. So every time there's a critical issue going on in Zambia, there's also a very controversial social issue going on, which distracts the young people from actually vote. So right now, young people should be talking about voter registration. They should be asking the question of how are you going to register 30,000 people per day? But instead, they're talking about social issues of, you know, people's breakups and people's relationships and stuff. And I'm at a point where I do not think this is coincidence. Every single time we have something critical, the dollar shoots up to 20 kwacha to $1. And we have all sorts of social issues going on the internet. I honestly don't think that's coincidence. I think there's certain people that are strategically diverting the attention of the young people and the diversion of the attention of people that should be focusing on critical issues.
So,
and then, like Joan said,
that,
there's also the
does that come back to my question then? Do we have weak institutions? Because I think if you institutionalize young people to value and understand that the politics around them define how they are going to be living their lives, whether it's getting out of poverty, whether it's attaining education, is there a weakness in our learning institutions and just general institutions that have prevented, that have probably allowed for these anomalies to take place, like you were talking about voters being victimized?
I will definitely say we have problems with our institutions. When you look at the COVID-19 situation and how it has further weakened an already weak education system, every single day on the internet, or if you interact with students, particularly those in public universities, they will keep talking about how the online system has failed and they still expect them to write their exams at the end of the year. Based on what? Like what are they basing this on? When you look at if we just look at the budgeting trends, for example, the past few years, when you look at how much money is allocated to the education sector or the Ministry of Education versus the amount of money that goes towards the government wage bill, you're already going to see that there's an imbalance there. And how can you realistically give people a quality education when you're not even allocating the right amount of resources? We think in this country that it makes more sense to spend $42 million on 42 fire trucks than it is to spend on our education system. How then are we going to create a caliber of citizens that are reasoning, that are able to critically analyze issues? And that's another thing that I was about to touch on. When I look at the majority voters are not able to analyze candidates and analyze the economic situation critically. We are unfortunately in a democracy that is an issue, is a democracy that focuses on politics of the belly. So it's not
what
about
needs to happen. I like what you've just said, because that's a critical thing. What needs to happen for voters to actually understand who they're voting for, who their candidates are? What has gone wrong there? Because this should be public information. These are people who should be public facing, and I'm worried that that's not happening. But is that what should be happening?
It should be. So I think it's something that is multifaceted. So there's different facets to it. First of all, we have to improve our education system. There is no way you can leave grade 12 and not understand what the Constitution is. You have to go to law school, or you have to take some course prior to after high school to understand how our Constitution works, what the Constitution means, and all of that stuff. As someone who did a little bit of the Zambian syllabus up to grade 9, there are certain things that I only began to to understand later. And I went to a good school. So it's really about the content of the curriculum. I don't think the curriculum is designed in a way to produce people that critically analyze the government system work. How does the parliamentary system work? And it doesn't produce people that are able to effectively participate. I think it produces people that can easily be brainwashed and people that can easily be manipulated. Then it comes to the opposition as well. I think as a member of the opposition, there's certain times when I look at the way that we handle issues, and I think we're just playing games, honestly speaking. But then there's a different dynamic. Democracy is expensive. Honestly speaking, democracy is expensive, and it's very difficult for opposition leaders to compete with a party of the day that has access to the national purse. It honestly is very difficult. And then another aspect is the onus is also on the citizens. We've gotten to a point where citizens sometimes almost inspire corruption. Every single time you see a minister, you see someone in a certain leadership position, you want them to give you money. The fact of the matter is hard-earned money. People are not just going to flash you 100 kwatas of their hard-earned money. So that money that we've become accustomed to wanting to receive from our opposition leaders is money that should be in our schools, is money that should be in our hospitals giving us medicine. But because there's that imbalance, I think we need to get to a point where as citizens, we have self-reflection and we start to see things for what they really are. Because there's certain things that have nothing to do with education. We just have to get to a point where we begin to ask questions. For example, if we look at when this government came into office under the late President Sata, the catchphrase was more money in your pockets. No one ever asked how. All they heard was the catchphrase, yeah, I'm going to have more money in my pockets. No one ever bothered to ask how. And that is not honestly on the politicians, it's on us, the citizens. We should be able to do due diligence. And then coming back to like what Jones said, and your question of the institutions, we have a police system that favors the party of the day. A few months ago, there was a contentious issue called Bill 10, a bill that they were trying to pass. And there were a certain number of young people that had wanted to have a protest against this bill. The police told them they were not able to have this protest because they did not have enough manpower to help them within the protest and to keep things from going haywire. A few weeks later, a group of young people are protesting in favor of the bill. And all of a sudden, the police find the manpower. And then we've also had other instances where people want to protest against issues, and then the police says they do not have the manpower to help them with the protest. If these people go ahead anyway, somehow there's enough manpower to go and arrest these people or to go and harass these people. There's an imbalance. I was looking at an article on the ECZ website, where the chairman of the ECZ was talking about how I think he was addressing political parties and church mother bodies. And he was talking about how he will not, and I don't want to misquote him, and this is an article from I think 2017 or 2018, but they would not as ECZ delay to take on punitive measures of political parties that did not conduct themselves correctly in elections. Since this article was written 2017 or 2018, we've had some of the most violent by-elections. We have not seen ECZ take any punitive measures.
And we still have the same people at the helm of ECZ, do we, since that statement?
Exactly. So what is happening? What is happening? Like, as a citizen, this is why I'm saying I have more questions. I'm looking at things and I'm asking questions. So it goes back to the thing of, I think we have people, and I think we've gotten to a point where and I don't want to use the word morality, but I think our sense of right and wrong has been degraded because we know it's wrong. We know it's wrong for us to be registering people for only 30 days. We know it's wrong. But then somehow, I don't know why someone wants to justify and say it is okay and we're going to make this work. And
Johns, can you come in on that one? Because I feel like you kind of rationalized this period when you're explaining to me. Could you rationalize that one? Because Tinashe here is confused.
I'm so confused. honestly speaking, and I won't lie. And
What
us
are you?
as
What are
citizens,
people
before Jones comes
thinking?
in,
Oh,
my issue is us as citizens, we have delegated the responsibility of holding our government to account and providing checks and balances. We've delegated it only to the opposition parties and only to certain institutions. And then we've seen that these people are not holding these people accountable. They're not doing what they're supposed to be. And all we are doing as Zambian citizens is complaining. That's it. All we do is complain. All we do is tweet about these things. All we do is write Facebook statuses, and nothing changes. Because honestly, if we had a diligent citizenry, this voter registration period would have been extended, or something would have happened. Honestly speaking, because
so I
this
suppose
is
that's
absurd.
what those that are suing, and I noticed that artivist Bflow, the singer, is part of that group of people who is trying to do that. But how much support is there for them anyway? Is there support? Do you think people are saying, yes, you're right to be suing and we agree with you, or not?
Wow, I think the people are really supporting them. And of course, there are those that are.
How do we define support? Sorry.
Yeah, and then
I would want to think that, especially when I'm talking to people like you who are coming from youth organizations, I'm hoping that you're going to be more action oriented, and that's what support would be, and not just keyboard warriors.
Yeah, so we are giving them support because really these things are affecting us, and they're affecting us the most. Like I said, Zambia is at, the population of Zambia now is the most youthful population that this country has ever had. Okay, but then the inequality, the negative effect of the inequality that is happening right now is hitting the young people the most. So we are supporting the young artists, and some of the support is actually is being done to the government themselves. Tinashe did refer to the issue of Bill 10. Now, this is a controversial bill, I'm sure you know about it, that is trying to change the constitution to realign it with the confusion that resulted from the 2016 constitution.
Okay, so you can assume that I might know, but I think our viewers might not. So if you explain just a little bit.
Sure. So this is just a bill that the ruling party in government has introduced to try to amend the constitution. Now, we had amended the constitution in 2016, but that amendment resulted into controversy. It also resulted into a contested election whose results has not even been, for example, accepted by the largest opposition leader. Now, that particular bill is so controversial to a point whereby they were proposing in that bill to say, look, we want to relegate the aspect of borrowing money on behalf of the government to cabinet. Now, these are 22 people or 36 people that sit in a meeting, and they represent one political entity to the exclusion of the rest of the people. And they say, you see, debt should be contracted by cabinet. It should not be, parliament should not be able to debate on these things. You know, in that bill, they are saying the president should be able to divide the country as and when he feels like, in whatever form and manner. He can wake up today and divide Lusaka half and half, and nobody should be able to say nothing. We said, no, that's not the way. And then they're saying, look, the government can take us to an organization and sign an international treaty without the approval of parliament. So us as a center, for example, we went in there on behalf of the young people and said, no, look, you cannot be 78 years old as the minister, and then you appropriate unto yourself the powers to be able to enter into foreign debt on behalf of people that are 5 years old, 10 years old, and by the time those people are 21 and 18 and they're going into university, you are dead like 30 years ago, and they have to struggle with it, with the debt, and then they become the slaves to those paymasters. This is not correct. So we are helping the young people, and we are with them in solidarity. Of course, we are doing it from different, we could do it from different perspectives. We can't all go to court, for example, but we are able to engage the ECZ. As Sila, for example, one thing that we have done is, in that particular bill that I referred to, there is a very nice proposition in there which has always been put on the table in the past 30 years. And at the time that they have to amend the constitution, they throw it out because it disadvantages them at that particular time, which is the issue of mixed member proportional representation. For your own information, out of 156 members of parliament, we only have three people that are below the age of 35. And out of those 3 people that are below the age of 35, in the committee in the National Assembly that looks at youth affairs, the committee chairperson in that committee is 75 years old. Now, how are we going
So does that mean you're not voting for your fellow young people then, in that case? Who are you blaming for that?
Okay, look, now, we are blaming this on the systemic, structural design of the system, okay? You know, this system here, you know, when you are no, the young people cannot talk, okay? And then when it comes now to the aspect of young people trying to vie for positions, and then they say, no, you are young people, you don't have experience, can you leave the old man, 75 years old? These are the people that were there when we were fighting for independence and all those things, even when things have changed. So you see, what we have done, for example, at SAI like that, now we are putting up a full proposal. And when we interrogated that particular submission, we asked them, do you understand what this mixed member proportional representation is? We were making a submission to the committee in parliament. They didn't know it. So we are now coming up with a full-blown mechanism on how this thing can work, how we can improve and tap from the energetic minds. Look, we live in a global world. We know the president of France, when he took over, he was only 38. President Obama, when he took over, was only 48. We have a 26 or 29-year-old minister of New Zealand. And these are economies that are performing 10 times better than what we are doing here. So truly, we appreciate, for example, the effort of our colleagues going into the court, and we are giving solidarity. We are also trying to be part of those consortia of organizations that are there to speak for young people, you know, try to highlight these issues to the powers that be, and show them the benefits of working with young people and including young people, and doing these things in a proper way that is inclusive to everybody, such that, you know, you don't want to create acrimony because next year you only end up registering 4 million people, the ruling party win, then the rest of the people are left outside. They start talking, and then you say, no, look, they are being unfair, and then they start blaming you as ECZ because they feel you are aligned to the ruling party, even when you are doing the correct thing. So we write letters, we go on radio, and we appreciate such kind of platforms. And I'm sure if young people see and listen to what we are saying, they'll be motivated to be able to improve and encourage themselves to do and participate in the governance process in a better and more informed way.
Thanks for coming to that particular point. Yeah, go ahead, Tinashe. Could you also make that your last comment? Unfortunately, we are running out of time. I was hoping we had more. Yeah.
No problem. I just wanted to add on and say, so for example, Jones in his own personal capacity has things he's doing. He's a sitting councillor, he mentors certain young people, he's vocal online. I also have things, I started an online platform this year when I realized that young people are not aware of some of the critical issues, and I find that the information is also not there. So I decided to have online conversations, and I'm trying to get people aware of the link between different aspects of our day-to-day lives and the development of the country and just the well-being of citizens. And even as Sila, like Joan said, there are many things that we are doing, and there are many things that civil society organizations are doing and activists are doing. But I would like to reiterate, even in closing, that we need to move away from this mentality as citizens where the onus is on Tinashe, the onus is on Sila, the onus is on only people who are in these positions of leadership to ensure that things are being done. Like you say, how are we supporting these activists? I'm sure it's nice for them to hear we stand behind you, and for there's people that went, I was looking at online, there's people that went to court and supported these people. But I think we need to rethink how we are supporting these people, and we need to become more factual and more honest with ourselves as citizens. And my concluding remarks would be, if we never ever again as citizens had a government that did its job, We never ever had opposition that did its job. We never had civil society that did its job, or institutions. What then would we as citizens do? What is our course of action? Because we have a structure that has delegated responsibility to all of these people. And we find ourselves in a society where it seems like these people are not assuming the responsibility. What are we as citizens going to do? And I think that those are the conversations we need to begin having, because I think the conversations we are having of, no, the government is not doing this, civil society is not, I think those are outdated conversations, because I think we need to read the writing on the wall, and we need to begin to rethink and restructure the way that we view things.
Thanks a lot, Tinashe. That's really a good way to sort of wind down as well. Jones, your final remarks, please.
Thank you very much, Tiwe, for having invited us to this platform. We can only hope that you keep inviting us more on specific topical issues, not general ones like this. But my concluding remarks would be that Zambia is the best country in Africa, if not in the world. It's literally a paradise. The only problem that we have in this country is lack of prudent, good leaders. As a consequence of that, corruption has become endemic. It has become part of our lives. The governance system has been overridden by political cadres who have very minimal understanding of issues. Corruption is off the roof. The debt is off the roof. Even when we have borrowed that money, as a country, we have just ended up repairing roads in Chainda, Kanyama, Chawama for the sake of political expedience. These roads are not generating the correct return on investment for them to be able to pay back. Now, as we sit today, the cock has come to roost. Our minister, unapologetically has written to the debt board holders, the merchants in Europe there, to ask them to see how we can defer this debt. The IMF has literally stopped talking to us because they've even removed their resident representative in Zambia. The COVID situation is weighing on us heavily. International trade is highly confused now. So this issue of voter registration, let's take it seriously. I know that the 30 days that is provided, personally, I feel it is not enough. And I think the ECZ chairperson is being insincere with his team. And this behavior of behaving as if they have a small province in the cloud where they're going to take their children and then they leave the rest of us here suffering, it is an illusion, because 30 days for 9 million voters in a third world country here where there is 12 hours of load shedding is really something that cannot be achieved. But besides everything else, I think my encouragement to the young people is let's not give up. Let's not give up on tomorrow. Tomorrow belongs to us. Let us go there and register. If you have an opportunity to register online, or you have a friend who has a smartphone, please register. Carry your friend to go. And when they open the process, let us be the first one to flood those centers, register, and then decide what kind of future we have. The kind of future that we can have is dependent or is directly correlated to the kind of decision that we make when we are electing this kind of leaders. So thank you very much, Chiwe, and we hope to be invited again.
Thank you so much for joining me. So we had Tinashe Mazala and John Mulunga from the Center for Young Leaders in Africa from Zambia, making a commentary on the pre-registration and re-registration exercise that the Zambian Electoral Commission has decided to implement. Join us again for African Voices platform on Sunday at 8:05 p.m. and on Wednesday. Good evening.